This has been a terrific year for the IndyCars. In the season's first race on a wet track at Surfers Paradise, Australia, Emerson Fittipaldi fought his teammate Rick Mears to take the lead and the win. On the mile at Phoenix, Bobby Rahal, now an owner-driver, went flag to flag for the victory. The new team surprised everyone by showing strength early in the season. The terrific fight continued at Long Beach as teammates Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan battled. On the final lap, Little Al was in front when Danny pushed past. All Al could manage was a fourth-place finish. It was different at Indy. In the closest final lap ever, Little Al edged out Scott Goodyear to take his first Indianapolis 500 crown. It was a glorious day for the Gallus Graco team. The spotlight was on Al, but Rahal was leading the points. In Detroit, Michael Andretti tried every trick in the book, but consistency continued to pay off for Rahal. For the Andrettis, 92 has been the toughest year ever. Jeff out for the season after his Indy crash. Mario hospitalized after his encounter with the Indy walls. And then there's Michael's year. On the pole at Long Beach, but his gearbox broke. On the pole at Phoenix, but the engine wouldn't start. And of course, Indy. Michael led 163 laps, only to roll to a stop 25 miles from victory. At Detroit, he drove possessed, bouncing off cars and walls, but not giving up. Finally, a last lap slide ended any chance he had of winning. But will Michael's luck now change? Half of the races run here at Portland have been won by the Andrettis. Mario in 85, again in 86, battling Michael in the closest finish to date. In 1990, another 1-2 finish with Michael out in front of his father. Days of sunshine for the now father-son team. Last year, Michael bullied his way from the second row to take the lead and win on his way to the PPG Cup. It was at this track that Michael began that incredible drive to the championship. Is this the day that Michael's luck will change? Or will his longest year continue? Mount Hood is the backdrop for the IndyCars in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. The world's leader in motorsports coverage presents Speed World. We couldn't ask for a prettier day in Portland, but the temperatures are expected to climb to 95 degrees for this, the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. Hello and welcome to Portland. I'm Paul Page, and as Michael Andretti comes here, as you've seen, his work is most definitely cut out for him. The man who was the dominating champion last year has been dominant in most of this season, but he has failed to make it to the checkered flag, and that is costing Michael dearly in points. Now, there's another major event developing here, and that is the presence once again of Rick Mears. Remember, he was injured during the running of the Indianapolis 500. He sat out the race at Detroit, watching it on television at home, but he is back here at Portland, and he is ready to go once again. And then there is the story of the points leader, Bobby Rahal. He's out in front of those points. He is looking very, very strong with that brand new team, and a lot is expected from him. Let's get an update on that situation from Gary Gerould.
Well, Paul, remember a year ago at this time of the season, Bobby Rahal came in with a nice point lead. That was the case, however, of consistent second-place finishes. He had 4 seconds already at this point of the year. This year, he's already won a pair of events. And Bobby now getting the gloves on and getting strapped in. The key, Bobby Rahal, for this day to get a third victory this early in the season.
I think getting to the first corner. I think getting through the first quarter is going to be the toughest part, but after that, it's, you know, we've just got to really watch our fuel consumption, and the track is coming up pretty good, so it's, you know, we're going to really, you're going to have to not make any mistakes at all, or it's going to be very costly.
And they have to contend, as you indicated, Paul, with temperatures in the 90s today. Now, another significant story here at Portland relates to the course itself. Let's go to turn number 1, and our colleague Jan Mikas.
Well, Gary, there's been a change down here in the chicane area because the drivers felt that the old chicane was too fast and didn't allow for passing. What they've done is replace the old chicane with an actual complex of corners. Now the cars come in at 175 miles an hour, the idea being that now this complex of corners slow them down. And it has done that. It slowed them down to 39 miles an hour. But now they come across asphalt and it changes to concrete. And although there's been a lot of running here this weekend, it has not yet given it the grip that the drivers want. They all like the change, but they say it's very slippery. These curbs also are of some concern. They're fine for a Trans Am car, but awfully big for an Indy car. If you go over the top of that, you'd be in trouble, and you could end up in this big gravel pit that they've added in here. The whole cost of this, $250,000.
Well, that new chicane has already proven in the practice to be a great passing zone. And the question here everyone is asking is what will happen in the chicane on the start? Well, we're not far from finding out. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of excitement here already. In the practice for this race, Rick Mears and Eric Bachelard coming out of the chicane got together, tore the right front suspension off of Rick's cars. Now, that's the fourth car the Penske organization has had seriously damaged in as many races. Now, what about drivers like Rick Mears coming back from an accident, or Mario Andretti? What about drivers who are suffering pain? Are they like other athletes, Derek Daly?
Well, we've all heard the expression playing with pain, but what about driving with pain? Racing drivers have this unusual mental ability to block out the bad memories of suffering serious injuries in a race car. They want to jump right back in the danger zone as soon as possible. I mean, what else explains the fact that Mears is here? He fractured his feet, sprained both his ankles and his wrist at Indy, yet just missed one race. Mario Andretti, multiple fractures of the toes of both feet. He has a new design of shoe to allow him to come back and race here at Portland. Jimmy Vasser broke his femur less than a month ago at Indy. He's back here. All these three drivers are coping with the pain that they must endure because for a racing driver, racing is the only thing that matters.
Well, considering those drivers with injuries, Portland International is one of the more physically grueling courses on the IndyCar circuit. Danny Sullivan talks about this Portland track in this week's Tip from the Cockpit.
I think physical conditioning in this race is going to be a big factor. I think you're going to have to be able to run strong all day long, all 105 laps or whatever it is that you're going to have to be strong. Everybody's fast, the cars are reliable, and you're going to have to be in good physical condition, not only because of the physicalness of the track, but also because of the heat, and that's going to play a big factor. It's only 1.95 miles long, I believe. It's quick. It's 61 seconds. So in the race, it'll be probably 62, 63 seconds. There's quite a few corners demanding some high speed, some low speed, some long, continuous corners, and that really puts a lot of wear and tear on the body. As I said, it's a 61-second lap. There's between 20 and 22 gear changes a lap. That's one every 3 seconds. That's on the course of the race. That's over 2,000 gear changes. There's quite a bit of braking here, acceleration. That puts from low speed. That puts a lot of wear and tear on the rear end. It's rough in a couple of spots. Not too bad, but there's a couple of rough spots. All that adds up to put wear and tear on the car. There is acceleration, deceleration, so that puts a lot of load, G-load, on the body. There's a lot of long right-hander. That puts a lot of neck strain on. The track is short enough that everything is pretty quick. That makes it tremendously physical. You really got to work the car to get it around here fast, and that makes it even more physical and to do it for 105 laps or whatever it is in 90-degree temperature. That'll make it a tough day at the office.
The IndyCar race is the centerpiece of the annual Portland Rose Festival here in Portland, Oregon. And today's live coverage on ESPN of this round number 6 of the IndyCar World Series, the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, is brought to you by PPG, world leaders in automotive finishes. By Valvoline, people who know use Valvoline. By Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by Toyota Motorsports, where technology on a fast track is built into every Toyota. We'll be back for the start of the engines right after these messages. Most famous command before the largest sports crowd in the state of Oregon. Now, the command.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Back up to you, Gordon. And the crowd all...
So here we go as the fight for the PPG Cup continues on a very hot day, with some reports that there are portions of the racetrack that are very hot now and beginning to break up. So high temperatures, a changing track surface, all things that these drivers will have to contend with. Emerson Fittipaldi sits in his position on the inside of the front row, the pole position, as he contemplates what may lie ahead. The distance, 102 laps, 198.9 miles, the total distance. And Michael Andretti looks to make it 3 in a row if possible. The Indy champion, Al Unser Jr., sits and is prepared as now the cars begin to roll away. We're set to go racing in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 from Portland, Oregon. Let's take a look at the diehard starting grid. On the pole, Emerson Fittipaldi, the 1989 winner of this race. Alongside Michael Andretti, he won the last 2 races here. In the second row on the inside is Danny Sullivan, the 88 Portland winner. Alongside Al Unser Jr., who won the first race here in 1984. In the third row to the inside is Bobby Rahal, the current points leader, and the 87 winner here in Portland. Alongside is Eddie Cheever, still searching for an IndyCar win. In the fourth row on the inside, Rick Mears, his 200th start at a track that's not treated him well. Alongside, Mario Andretti is back. He won back-to-back races here in 85 and 86. The fifth row on the inside, Raul Boesel, now a full-time driver for Dick Simon. And Scott Pruitt in the True Sports entry. In the sixth row, Robbie Gordon, a rookie at this track. And John Andretti, currently 10th in the point standings. The seventh row on the inside is Scott Brayton, the Lola development driver. And Scott Goodyear, who finished second at the Indy 500. In the eighth row, Ross Cheever, Eddie Cheever's brother. He currently leads the All-Japan Formula 3000 series. Outside is Jimmy Vasser in his first race since breaking his leg at the Indy 500. The ninth row on the inside, Tony Bettenhausen back in the cockpit after sitting it out in Detroit. And Brian Till, a rookie at this race. In the 10th row is Eric Bachelard, the 1991 Indy Lights champion, and Ted Prappitz. The 11th row on the inside is Jeff Wood, driving for Frank Arciero. And Vinicio Salmi of Monte Carlo. In the 12th row, Ross Bentley, the Canadian, is a rookie at this race. Alongside is Nicola Morozzo of Italy. And in the 13th row, all alone, is Buddy Lazier of Vail, Colorado. Without any trouble at all 25 cars answer the call to start their engines. We ride on board with several of the cars. Beautiful onboard camera shots. Now, this race is held at the edge of Delta Park at Portland International Raceway. Not far away, the Columbia River flows toward the Pacific through the Columbia River Gorge. This is a very popular place for windsurfers because of the swirling winds here. We'll be back with the start of the race right after this. On the second of 2 parade laps, looking for the pace lap at the conclusion of this rounding. We have a number of good onboard cameras here, and here is the way the track looks, Derek Daly.
And right after that checkered flag, that's the new complex that we saw earlier in the opening. It's 40 miles an hour. There is a surface change. It's very difficult. It's very wide in the way in under braking, and then it funnels down and makes things very, very difficult.
Some of the great on-camera views that we have available for you, looking back from Bobby Rahal's car, and a camera mounted at the exit to the tunnels looking through the suspension over the shoulder of Scott Brayton. Some tremendous shots that we're going to have for you today. Let's go trackside and Jan Beekes.
Paul, the story is here, will it be a 2-stop race or a 3-stop race? Reason being, there's only 78.5 gallons here as your allotment. 78.5, the cars hold 40. It means you'd have to come in on fumes to make it in 2 stops. The deal is, though, a yellow flag, you could save some fuel, and that might be able to do it in 2 stops. All green, definitely 3. Let's go down to Gary Gerould.
Well, Jan, we're down here now in this first turn watching this field stream through. It's the last time that they'll come through at this speed. The next time around, they're going to be at full song, and that's going to be the critical spot. Everybody agrees it's going to happen right here at this new portion that you talked about just a few minutes ago of this racetrack, and everybody's a little apprehensive about it. With open-wheel cars, they've got good reason to be apprehensive. Paul?
So the start coming up here, and a lot of concern about that very first turn. You heard Bobby Rahal express his concern. The weather today, well, it couldn't be nicer. It's 89 right now, expected to go as high as 95 degrees. Very little wind and no chance whatsoever of rain. On the line today in this race, well, a great deal of money. We go 102 laps. The first fuel stops, barring a yellow flag, should come between the 32nd and the 35th lap. Now we take a look at the engines in this race, with the Chevy Indy V8A being the most dominant engine, but keep an eye on those Ford Cosworth XB engines. And the chassis in the race today, with Lola again being the dominant chassis, the one most readily available to purchase in the IndyCar Series right now. And former winners here, well, Michael Andretti looks to make it 3 in a row, but there are plenty of drivers. All the winners of this race are driving in the race today. And Michael Andretti, well, first you really have to get across that finish line under the checkered flag. There's the story and why Michael is not as strong as he could be. So the field now comes off the final turn down the main straightaway. Nick Fenorio, the official kart starter, has the flag in hand. The green flag is out, and they are underway. 200 miles lie ahead, heading for that chicane, the very first corner. Neatly they string through that they all come well down on the brakes, and several up over the bumpers on the right side.
And up over the curves on the inside was A.J. Foyt's car being driven by Ross Cheever, Eddie Cheever's brother here. He got squeezed out, but Michael Andretti looks to have the best start of everybody.
Michael Andretti got a real shot coming off the starting line, really looked strong and moved into the lead, and you can see not only did he move in the lead, he was able to put some distance between him and this man, Emerson Fittipaldi, in the number 5 car. So Fittipaldi drops back to second place now as the first lap is underway here in the Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200 at Portland. That's Al Unser Jr. that is now chasing Fittipaldi in 3rd place, and Danny Sullivan runs in 4th place. This was the start as we look back from Bobby Rahal as Rick Mears and Scott Pruitt got very, very close together. It bounced Scott Pruitt into the wall and shoved John Andretti all the way off the left side of the course.
Well, that's what we said earlier on. It's 3 and 4 wide down this long front straight here, and then suddenly it goes down to a 2-lane road. You cannot fit 4 abreast cars into 2 lanes, and that's what we saw. Luckily, there doesn't seem to be any damage to Scott Pruitt's car.
Michael Andretti begins to pull away. The battle begins to develop for 3rd place. Again, the look back from Bobby Rahal's car. That's Eddie Cheever following him, and you get a real good idea when you watch this shot. Look at the tire over there on the left edge of the screen, and look at how it deflects back and forth. Now, the wheel isn't moving. That's the tire moving back and forth as it's loaded up in the corners.
That's right. That's the bottom wishbone that we see right in the view there with the Miller Craft decals on it. But phenomenal pictures that we now have from the inside, the suspension, never mind inside the race car.
What do you think came first, the decal or the camera?
Yeah, exactly. You tell me.
We continue to cover now the rest of the field as they come through. Michael Andretti at the conclusion of lap 1 pulled out a 2.3-second lead. Mario Andretti, his father, sits back in the field now, running in 7th place with John Andretti sitting just behind him. Here comes the rest of the field. You got a glimpse there of Rick Mears starting his 200th IndyCar race as Cheever moves out to challenge Rahal. Moves to the inside, but doesn't have enough up on Rahal, and Rahal maintains position.
The idea they had in designing this new chicane was to create a good passing zone. They did do that, but remember, the cars have to be very close together before you take a risk to slide down the inside of somebody, because there's so little room when you do get down in there.
Eddie Cheever currently runs in 8th place, chasing Bobby Rahal and closing in once again, looking for an opportunity to poke the nose of that car inside Rahal and get around the corner. Tony Bettenhausen has rolled his car into the pits. He just made his 100th IndyCar start, but already that start is in trouble as they have the cowling off the back of the car and are working on the machine.
And made his return to road racing, having had Stefan Johansson do a splendid job in Detroit, finishing in 3rd place. But Johansson will be back in that car later in the year.
Again, the rest of the field comes off of the final turn. They're back on the pit straight once again, and once again it is Eddie Cheever who is pursuing Bobby Rahal in an ongoing battle for 5th place. Rahal currently has 5th, but here comes Cheever once again, closing in. A little bit of a different interval when you take a look at the camera from the outside of the track. Cheever tries to the left side, can't get it done. Now he moves a little bit to the right side and looks for an opportunity. No, Rahal begins to pull away. So the battle breaks off for the moment between Eddie Cheever and Bobby Rahal. It is a fight for 5th place. Michael Andretti still has the lead right from the green flag over Emerson Fittipaldi. Continues to try and hold off a charging Eddie Cheever in an ongoing battle for 5th place now, as Rahal and Cheever have been chopping at each other all the way around this course. The front end of Cheever's car washed a little bit just a second ago as he came through that corner, and he continues to work Rahal. Though on the pit straight here, he drops back.
And this is Rahal's favorite chassis. It's number 007. They call it James Bond. This is the one that he won at Phoenix and in Detroit, his favorite car.
Oh, Eddie Cheever is right there. Again, the Ford Cosworth XB engine chasing last year's Chevrolet. So you have a comparison of the two different power plants here. And Tony Bettenhausen still sitting in the pits, still looking for an opportunity to get back in the race. They have the Colin back now, and they are planning to get him back into the fight. So Tony Bettenhausen will rejoin the race, though he is well behind. Yeah, is that right, Gary Gerald?
Well, they just got the engine refired. As you can see, he screams out of the pits. He came in with no boost. They changed some of the electronics. They hope they've got him back in for some laps now.
On board with Michael Andretti as he comes onto the pit straight once again. The last lap was the fastest of the race for Michael and the fastest of the race overall at 110.5 miles an hour. So Michael Andretti is taking advantage of the clear course ahead and trying to put as much distance between himself and Emerson Fittipaldi as he can. Now 3.6 seconds is the lead that Michael Andretti enjoys over Emerson Fittipaldi. Here's the rest of the order as they come through.
Scott Pruitt still holding off Rick Mears. Mears had that bumping session early in that first lap. We know Scott Pruitt who hit John Andretti. So they have settled down now into a more respectable form of racing. So Rick Mears struggled a little bit with the car. Remember, he crashed earlier in the weekend. Now he's still chasing Scott Pruitt.
So Scott Pruitt, in an ongoing battle there for 9th place, tries to hold off Rick Mears, who, despite problems with his feet and with his right wrist, is looking very smooth on this track today. Jan Beekes, you have an update.
Paul, that pace that both Michael and Emerson are running right now, that is not a two-stop pace. The word up and down the pits is that with the heat as hot as it is, they expect this track could break up. They expect a full course yellow. So in other words, right now, they're running flat out. If it turns out that doesn't happen, then we'll really have some action at the end.
Well, both Derek Daly and I are keeping a pretty good eye on the corners, and I haven't seen any evidence of breakup yet.
Not yet, but earlier today, when they ran the Indy Lights Series, Tommy Byrne mentioned afterwards that the track was, in fact, beginning to break up and give trouble. So we do expect, quite likely, there is going to be some problems later on during the race.
You also saw a good view of the change in surface. That new chicane complex has been built with concrete. Most of this course is asphalt, and so the tire engineers have to deal with the change in surface as well as the high temperatures that they're facing here today. Scott Pruitt, the True Sports All-American entry. The team still in a little bit of flux after Steve Horn has left that operation. Michael Andretti in front. Last week, he was in Montreal for the Formula One Grand Prix of Canada. Our ESPN colleague, Andrew Marriott, spoke with him about his interest going into the Formula One season.
I have to ask the question, does Formula One need Michael Andretti more than Michael Andretti needs Formula One?
Well, I don't know if it's for me to answer that. I think Formula One needs a top American driver, yeah, I think. And I'd like to do it if things are right, but if not, I don't want to do it just to say I did Formula One. If I do it, I want to know that I have a shot at winning races.
Is Formula One a realistic option for you for next season?
Oh, I think so. I think there's a good possibility it could happen. You know, there's going to be some things happening, I'm sure, this year in the driver situation, and you know, we'll just have to see what happens.
So Michael Andretti, thoughts of going to Formula One? A lot of people say maybe Ferrari?
Maybe. That was the Marlboro McLaren man that stood behind him there. So that's the pit he was in during that interview. What a great drive that would be for for Michael. I'd love to see him do it. He would be spectacular over there. And I think it will be a great boost to Formula One to have Michael Andretti competing.
So at the top of the order, as we get a glimpse of Scott Goodyear, the young Canadian who finished so well in Indianapolis, now runs in 11th place. Michael Andretti leads it, being chased by Fittipaldi. Though continuing to stretch out his lead. Al Unser Jr. is third. Danny Sullivan is fourth. In fifth is Bobby Rahal, followed by Eddie Cheever, Mario Andretti, John Andretti, Scott Pruitt, Rick Mears, and then this battle, which of course is Scott Goodyear, Robbie Gordon, and Raul Boesel. Robbie Gordon, a rookie at this track, his second drive in the IndyCars.
And Robbie Gordon going about his business very quietly on a steep learning curve here. He was, however, 5th fastest overall in the morning's warm-up this morning. So Robbie Gordon doing a very good job. Remember, he has such a limited amount of single-seater experience that it really is a very tall order to ask somebody like him to step into one of these very powerful fast cars and learn everything in a very short period of time.
Raul Boesel there in the number 11 Panasonic car. Now a full-time ride for him. As we take a look at two cars going head-to-head here.
Vinicio Salmi in the Euro Motorsports car slides down the inside of Jeff Wood, who's now driving for Dennis McCormick. McCormick Motorsports out of Indianapolis. This is one of our Italian drivers, and that was for 21st place.
So the fight not only up toward the front, though no real fight at the front of the field, but they battle up and down the field here at Portland. That new chicane giving the drivers some opportunity to pass under braking and making the cars look very good. They put a nice new grandstand in at that point as well, and it really adds to the spectator viewing here. Rahal is in trouble. Bobby Rahal wants somebody to come out and push in and get him going. It looks like he took a quick slide off the course and killed the engine.
And the worst thing he could do is kill the engine, because now that makes your mistake into a disaster. We didn't see yet exactly what happened, but he is well off onto the grass. Engine is dead. Rahal needs a push, but look at this. Championship points slip away every second he sits there.
Mr. Consistency in serious trouble here by the side of the course at Portland. He was running in 5th. Now he tries to direct the corner workers on how to get him out of there. Perhaps we can hear that. Remember, this is a car with an onboard camera and an onboard microphone as well. Carl Hogan, his partner in the team.
They'll know exactly what's happened. Rahal will have been on the radio telling him what's happened here. Look at it. It's in the infield right-hander, one of the faster of the infield corners. But Rahal is, look, what, 25, 35 yards off into the grass.
He wants the corner workers to get him up next to the edge of the track. Corner workers, of course, all volunteers, these course marshals, and I don't think they're quite as anxious. They're seeing what we're seeing, which is the rest of the field circulating past just about 25 yards away and doing it at great speed.
And remember, Michael will have seen him. He knows exactly that the leader of the championship is off in the boondocks in trouble. So what a big break this would be for Michael's championship hopes if he can hang on and gather up a big scoop full of points here.
Michael Andretti continues to lead, but he's relaxed a little bit now. The fastest lap of the race belongs to Emerson Fittipaldi at 111.4 miles an hour, and Fittipaldi is beginning now to whittle away on Michael Andretti's lead. Michael Andretti was as far as 3.6 seconds ahead of Fittipaldi. Now that interval has dropped to 2.5.
And one of the most important things that Michael needs in this race is to add a little bit of finesse to temper his driving style.
Here's what happened to Bobby Rahal.
This is exiting the chicane. This is 4th gear. Now this is the double apex right-hander. Watch what happens here. Oh, he loses it under braking for the second part of the double apex right-hander. Didn't seem to be anybody else involved. Gets on the brakes, but killed the engine. That was the biggest disaster.
So the crew now waits for him. They hope that they get him out, towed up to speed, the engine restarted, and he'll come back in for a new set of tires and a refueling. That could be critical. Continues at the Portland Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200. 14 laps of the 102-lap scheduled distance are complete. The number 10 car, of course, belongs to Scott Pruitt. As Pruitt now taking advantage of the failure of Bobby Rahal, moves up into 8th place. The leader, of course, this man, Michael Andretti, who continues to try and drive away from Fittipaldi, but Fittipaldi is closing in and is now a mere 1 second behind Michael Andretti. There's Fittipaldi. I got a good view of him as he is now closing in on Michael. And Fittipaldi has made up about a second and a half in the past 2 or 3 laps.
That was a huge jump. Now remember, Michael did get caught in traffic on the last 2 laps, so we'll have to see for a lap or two to see does this settle down again. But certainly for the time being, Emerson is closer now to Michael than he's been for the last 5 or 6 laps.
And Emerson continues to hold the fast lap of the race at 111.5 miles an hour. And as they came across the line, Emerson Fittipaldi had whittled another couple hundredths off of his separation from Michael Andretti. The look back from Michael. Michael can now begin to get a glimpse of Fittipaldi in his rearview mirrors and knows that he is definitely under attack.
Oh, he is under attack. He got that huge lead. Carl Haas licks the cigar there, worried what's going to happen to his boy Michael. But Emerson very definitely closing in. Now he's closer than ever as he flashes across the start-finish line here. I was going to say Michael couldn't see Emerson, but out of the mirrors you can. Out of our rear view camera, we couldn't.
On the pit straight, now heading through the chicane, Emerson Fittipaldi picking up a little bit more on Michael Andretti. Takes the interval down to 0.7 of a second. The seconds no longer matter. Fittipaldi is there and now beginning to challenge the leader of the race. As we take a look at our computer-generated driver summary, Fittipaldi, the fastest lap in the race thus far at 111.52 miles an hour. So Fittipaldi closing on Michael Andretti.
And very much the pace setter here all weekend. He was fastest in just about every session. And unusual, Michael was only 10th fastest or 8th fastest in the opening day. They worked very hard to correct the handling on this car, but he has not been as dominant throughout the weekend as he has been many times in the past.
As we watch Emerson Fittipaldi, a year ago, it was here at Portland. Michael Andretti started his come-from-behind PPG championship run. We asked Emerson Fittipaldi if he thought he could do the same.
I think the potential is there for us to recover. IndyCar race is very, very competitive, like never been. I mean, Bob is there, Dan is running really strong, our junior is there, and I think the competition will be very tough for the rest of the season.
Fittipaldi hopes that he can move up and score another PPG Cup. Right now, his objective is just in front of him, Michael Andretti. Eddie Cheever continues his pursuit now of Mario Andretti. Mario got around Cheever, and now Cheever has to get back. Here's Bobby Rahal back into the fight once again. But Rahal has dropped well down in the order and now runs 23rd after having to wait for a tow and then being brought into the pits to change tires and top off the fuel. The tire change necessary because of the slide.
And here's a replay of what Mario did to Cheever. Look at Cheever squeezes Mario down almost over the curb, then realizes that Cheever cannot make the left-hander, so he jumps on the brakes. Mario sails through. But Mario now beginning to show some aggressive moves here.
Now remember that those two drivers got together at Long Beach. Now when something like this happens, Derek, do drivers think back to that and think, oh no, it's happening again?
Yes, they do sometimes. Mario and Cheever have been a volatile situation in the past, and they both remember those situations.
Over the shoulder of 13th place, Scott Brayton, and look at how when he turns into the corner, the lateral G-loading on this car will slap his head over to one side of the cockpit. On the pit straight now, Scott Brayton. In the pits, Gary Gerould has an update on Mario.
Well, Paul, Derek indicated earlier the drivers that are battling hurt today. Mario Andretti, one of those men. You know the story of the broken toes at Indianapolis. They made a mold of Mario's feet. Brett Wennington, one of the fabricators for the Newman Haas team, then went to work with carbon fiber, made an actual carbon fiber plate for an insole in Mario's shoes. It helps distribute the pressure from the brake pedal, the throttle, on his very sore feet. He has also cut out the toe section on his shoes. Big toe on the right and across 4 other toes on the left. And Derek Daly can really relate to this because Derek kind of pioneered this move when his feet were injured several years ago. Derek?
That's right, Gary. Back in '84, I found the brake pedal was the biggest problem. It would punch a hole in through the bottom of the soles of the very flimsy racing boots that are very much like wrestling shoes. I made the carbon sole, and it transformed my ability to drive cars. And I actually mentioned it to Mario in the hospital, and they've gone one better. Actually made a mold of his feet. So a good job and a good help to help Mario back here so soon, so fast.
Any of the shoes that you can purchase as a professional race driver actually have carbon fiber in the soles now?
I don't believe they do, but it is not a bad suggestion.
Well, Stan 21 was talking about it if they've not actually done it.
One thing Mario was worried about, whether he would lose the feel of the brake pedal. Well, the very first time I used it, I realized that no feel is lost whatsoever, so I was comfortable, and I think Mario is obviously benefiting from it today.
The 24 car, Brian Till, makes his stop, one that would be considered way early on the 20th lap of the race. So Brian Till gets the car started and rolls back into the traffic. Now, that was an early stop, so there must be more than just a need for tires and fuel there. This is something put out by Brian Till's organization on the top 10 things that rookies don't want to do, and Brian Till doesn't want to do that. Right there, you don't want to do that.
Mario tried to slide down the inside of Brian Till. Remember, Till was on cold tires. He had just left the pit lane. We'll have to get back to his top 10 rookie list later on. But Mario did make contact. And again, Till's engine has stalled. And he is in a very, very precarious position right in the middle of that chicane.
And, of course, you've got a graphic display of how cold tires will affect a car. Brian was just out of the pits. I think we got the best display at this year's Indy 500, where the track temperature and the tire temperatures just never matched up. Here it is again, Derek.
Till is on the inside. Now Mario and Cheever's coming. Mario locks the brakes, realizes that Till did not see him, touched wheels, and Mario, no, he didn't quite make it around the outside. The left rear suspension also touched. So now, hopefully, Mario has not deranged that left rear suspension on his car.
And the report is that Scott Pruitt, and you can see it, look at that right rear. It's gone flat on Scott Pruitt's car. He will most definitely had to have it in for the pit. So Scott Pruitt now with the tire almost totally down. In fact, totally down now and beginning to rip at the tread of the tire. Scott Pruitt is trying to get that car safely back into the pit area. The tire almost totally off of the rear wheel now, and the hope is that it will not do any damage to the car suspension in this run into the pits.
The biggest problem when you break a tire or get a flat tire like this, when it begins to break up, if you don't slow down, it actually destroys the bodywork of the car.
Gary Gerold's right there.
We get our first look, Paul, and boy, there is significant damage. The tire, of course, has been shredded, as you were able to see. The crew now replacing the tires all the way around. They'll try to check the suspension, I'm sure, as well. They're also completing refueling. It looks like they're going to be able to get him back out. Off the jacks and away is Scott Pruitt.
So just the change of the tire, and Scott Pruitt is back into the fight. Michael Andretti has the lead in this race. Emerson Fittipaldi has fallen now to 2.2 seconds back, but Fittipaldi still is running very quick.
It's been almost 2 hours.
Portland, the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200. Michael Andretti is still the leader. We're watching a fight between Mario Andretti and Rick Mears. The two of them have been right at each other the last lap and a half or so. Mario losing positions when Brian Till got in trouble.
Close look at Mario's right front wing. I actually think that is slightly bent down too, but not too much damage done to it.
So they circle off of the final turn onto the pit straight once again. That is Scott Goodyear that is now closing in on Rick Mears, and of course John Andretti is just ahead as here comes Mario darting inside of Scott Pruitt, who is not running in this battle but definitely a factor, and Mario is able to put Pruitt as a separator between himself and Rick Mears, who is his nearest challenger. They come past the IndyCar safety truck. This is when Mario got into his problem. Brian Till losing it on the cold tires. Mario comes to the outside and just nicks him with his left rear tire.
It actually looked as if Brian Till was beginning to lose control before Mario even hit him. So it's so slippery in there. Remember, it's a concrete surface. It is a surface change, but definitely a major holdup for Mario. And Brian Till, in fact, is still there. That's him right there being towed back to the chicane, towed out of the chicane.
In fact, it was Brian Till's spin by itself. Mario just happened to be there and didn't get involved until after the car was almost stopped spinning.
No, I think Mario's front suspension did actually hit Till, which actually accelerated his spin.
So the fight continues with the possibility that Mario may not only have damage to the front but to the rear, and we'll keep an eye on that front wing for me. It looks right here like it may be in fact down and dragging a little bit. Here comes Scott Goodyear around Scott Pruitt, and Scott Goodyear trying to stay in contact with the fight involving Rick Mears and Mario Andretti, because Goodyear runs currently just behind that battle. There's Mario. We'll keep an eye on that wing, and it does look like it's drooping quite a bit, as Rick Mears is right there now and ready to challenge.
Here's the two injured drivers, both injured feet, come back earlier than most people would come back to any sport, and they're in battle here together. Rick Mears now, Mario was faster earlier on, pulled away from Rick, but now, for whatever reason, now they're locked in battle. But Rick Mears, not one to take unnecessary chances, so he's quite happy to buy this time here.
On the backside of the circuit, Rick Mears appears to be faster. Now they come onto the long pit straight. A sweeping right-hand turn brings them to the pit straight. They flash past the pit area, across the start-finish line. If Rick is going to make his move, this would be where it is.
Oh, little poke down the inside, didn't make it, but Rick is now sending a message to Mario. I am right here, and this is what I may intend to do. So you watch yourself, turning up the pressure on Mario.
That move cost Rick a little bit in distance, but he has most of the track to make the distance back up and try and close on Mario Andretti. So then on the next lap, he can try the same maneuver. There he comes a little bit outside of Mario Andretti. Something on the track that's in the chicane, and you wonder if it isn't part of Mario's car, though it could be Brian Till's as well. Let's go down to Gary Gerald.
Paul, the crew for Mario Andretti trying to assess by radio the damage. Here's what they think the problem is. They think it's a side plate and then one of these side flaps in the second tier on the front wing. This is a spare wing, obviously, here in the pits, which they can put on, but of course that takes time. They don't want to do it unless they absolutely have to. They're continuing to assess the situation. Paul?
Well, maybe we can take an even harder look at that and see what it looks like as we watch for Mario Andretti. That's Michael coming through there. Obviously, his front wing is in fine shape. Emerson Fittipaldi just behind him. We'll keep an eye on Mario Andretti as he circles the track with Rick Mears chasing him, and see what effect there might have been to that wing. Now, in today's Track Fact, Jan Beekes takes a look at the true purpose of a shock absorber.
The word shock absorber that we use both on our family car and on an Indy car is actually a term that's a euphemism. In other words, it's a name that we've given something to make it easy to refer to. But that's not the function of it. When the wheel goes over a bump, the suspension moves, which actuates this rocker, and it's actually the spring that absorbs the shock. It is the job of the shock absorber to control that spring. If you had an uncontrolled spring, it would act like a pogo stick. So the best word that we could use for this would be a damper, because it dampens the force of the spring. It does it in two ways. When the spring compresses, this is called compression damping. When you come back and pull, this is rebound damping. This is fully adjustable on an Indy car and keeps the car on the road instead of flying up like a pogo stick. This may not necessarily be the best name for this part, but it's an integral part of tuning an Indy car chassis.
Back at the IndyCar, Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, Portland, Oregon. Michael Andretti leads, Emerson Fittipaldi second, Alan Jr. third. Danny Sullivan is now running in fourth place, and Eddie Cheever is running up in the fifth position, and we should be within a couple of laps of the pit stops. Here is the fight for the lead, with Emerson Fittipaldi continuing his pursuit of Michael Andretti, and Michael now having to deal with traffic line just ahead.
And this is a real fight for the lead. Michael was about 2 seconds ahead of Emerson, got caught in traffic. Emerson came right up, then Emerson got caught in traffic. That's Michael sliding down the inside of Scott Brayton. But remember, if you can't pass him on the racetrack, Emerson is hoping that maybe he can pass him in the pit lane with superior pit work from his crew.
Well, the Penske crew has been watching for both Emerson Fittipaldi and Rick Mears the past couple laps. Now we have Emerson Fittipaldi lined up behind Scott Brayton, and Fittipaldi has the same challenge. As you see the back end track out there on Fittipaldi's car, as he comes through that wide sweeper, Fittipaldi has to get around Scott Brayton as well, so he can renew his contact with the leader of the race, Michael Andretti. And Eddie Cheever comes in on the 31st lap to make his stop. That would be about a lap early, Gary.
Yeah, we expected it would be another lap. They're checking for debris. They're looking around the suspension. They've completed the fueling. Let's go to Jan Beekes as Cheever pulls away.
Rick Mears is in. They were considering changing the front wing. Look at the tire marks on the front wing. He has hit Scott Pruitt. He is now out of here. They have decided against changing the front wing, but he is losing a little bit of front end downforce. That's what gave Pruitt that flat tire.
So still waiting for the leaders of the race, Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti. Michael Andretti has been the front of the race right from the green flag. Challenged by Fittipaldi, though Fittipaldi hasn't been able to get around him.
And you see Mears coming through the chicane there on cold tires, working at that steering wheel, trying to keep that 750 horsepower in control. But Mears has obviously been in the wars 2 times now, on the start and again with Scott Pruitt, which, as Jan said, gave Pruitt that puncture.
Emerson Fittipaldi, by the way, mentioned to me yesterday that his father is in Monte Carlo this weekend, was hoping to get a view of the IndyCar race, and Emma wanted to make sure that his father knew that he had said Happy Father's Day. Well, they're ready now for Emerson Fittipaldi as the crew stands ready to go to work as soon as that car comes in, as we indicated at the starting, and there he peels off. So Emerson Fittipaldi is ready for his stop, and Jan Beekes waits.
They've been speaking with Emerson on the radio. They're very concerned about tires because they saw Bobby Rahal come by with those huge blisters. But what they don't know is those blisters were from Rahal spinning. Also, they saw Pruitt come in with a flat tire, so they have told him to back off a little bit and save the tires. But of course, now that he's been in, they can see that in 15.4 seconds they changed those tires, and they will know now that it wasn't a blistering problem, and they can tell him to stand on it.
So Emerson Fittipaldi goes back into the fight, though the rest of the field rolled past, and most of the field has elected to stay out yet another lap. We're on the 33rd lap of this race, so the scenario as to whether or not it'll be a 2 or a 3 lap race is leaning toward a 3-stop race right now. The crew now waits for Mario Andretti. Mario Andretti stayed on the main straightaway, and Mario looks solid.
And Emerson was on the radio asking his crew, did Michael pit yet? Because he wants to know, has he beaten him in and out of the pit lane? But Michael didn't. Here he is.
Gary Gerould is right there.
And we're watching this Newman Haas team spring into action from the rear of the car, keeping an eye on everything. Michael appears to be patient, gets a cooling drink. We listen and watch. The fueling is completed. They need every precious drop. We've got him in just over 15 seconds. Sullivan flashes by as Michael exits.
And you can see some moisture at the vent valve. That's what's right behind the camera there. And it, of course, will just evaporate into the air. Al Unser Jr. is in, Jan Beekes.
Al Unser Jr. just pulls away as they finish service right behind him on his teammate, Danny Sullivan. They came in on the same lap. Whoa! Almost collects one of Al Jr.'s teammates. Oh, it is tight down here when you have 2 cars coming in at once, Paul.
So both Al Unser Jr. and Danny Sullivan in. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Paul, we're watching Mario Andretti. If there was any indication of injured feet on this stop, you would have never known about it. There was a wicker change on the rear wing. They're indicating that they want, and they're having a bit of a problem as they get the little release hatch up. Now they slip the new wicker bill back in at the rear wing. Mario is waved out of here. This was not a fast stop. They had a little bit more problem than they anticipated.
And you can see the damage to Mario's wing, the side plate, and part of the right outside of the nose wing. The side plate isn't that critical, and for that matter on a road course, how much is the wing surface?
Well, the wing surface loses him downforce, alters his handling, so that has slowed Mario down a little bit. However, he is still in very good shape.
Scott Brayton makes his move into the pits, as here's Danny Sullivan as he came out of the pits and straight across the chicane on the exit road. And of course the rules here are very simple. If you do that, you'll come in for a stop and go penalty. So Danny Sullivan will revisit the pits once again.
Revisit the pits, and a huge time loss because Sullivan was running very, very well in a good 5th position, but now he's got to make up a lot of time because remember the stop and go is going to put him right back at the back of the serial.
Jan Beekes is there.
Not only is he coming in for a stop and go, they took a look underneath the car because they're afraid that he may have done some damage, but they also got got that splash, Paul, so this could be that splash. Now he only has to make one more stop.
Well, of course, they only came in just a lap ago, so Derek Daly with a splash 1 lap later make a world of difference?
Unless they didn't fill it up the time earlier on. But look at Sullivan sideways as he exits the chicane here on cold tires. But so much happens so quickly in the pit lane during these stops. But the interesting thing is, when the drivers rev these engines, you can hear them on the rev limiter as they try and grab the gear and get out of the pit lane as soon as possible.
And of course, the change in the course, that new chicane has changed the character of the pit exit as well. So the cars pitted closest to the exit, well, they have a little different situation trying to get out, and it's a little more difficult, as witnessed Danny Sullivan. Michael Andretti now turning laps at 112 miles an hour, leads this race. Emerson Fittipaldi is in second, but here's a 3-car battle with Scott Goodyear trying to hold off a charging Rick Mears and Mario Andretti in a battle for 7th place. Rick moves to the inside. Mario comes wide to the outside. Mario comes across the grass just a little bit too wide on that corner.
Brave move, brave move. Had no chance to pull it off. He tried to come down the inside of Rick Mears. Rick saw exactly what he was doing, moved to the middle of the road, pushed Mario to the outside, and then Mario stuck his outside rear wheels off the racetrack, and that was it. He couldn't make the corner. Lucky he got away with it.
So Mario Andretti, as Danny Sullivan makes his stop and go, and has made his stop and go and is in and out, Mario Andretti comes off of the course. Only that is a penalty merely in itself. You're off the course, you come back on. Whatever you lost, no penalty.
Now what? Mears went down the inside of the road, therefore not leaving any room for Mario. Pushed him to the outside. Mario ran out of room and suddenly could not make the left-hander. But look, he slides through the grass back on the racetrack. Luckily, he didn't do any damage.
I'll tell you what, that's a pretty spectacular job of getting the race car under control coming off that grass, because that's just like driving off onto ice. Now Rick Mears again worrying Scott Goodyear, and Rick Mears comes to the inside trying to grab the position from Goodyear, can't get it done. Goodyear continues to roll, has good momentum. Now they have traffic just ahead of them, and Rick Mears sees the traffic, moves up, tries to find a position on Goodyear. Mears comes to the inside as they come onto the pit straight. Mears comes alongside Goodyear.
And it is a drag race down to turn 1. Can Mears slide down the inside before this chicane? Yes, he tries it.
And Rick Mears takes the position away from Scott Goodyear, so Rick Mears now runs in 6th place. But Scott Goodyear is not about to give up. Michael Andretti is still our leader, followed by Emerson Allenser Jr., Eddie Cheever, and a great run for John Andretti.
In the engine today.
Back at the Budweiser GI Joe's 200, Portland, Oregon, the largest attended sporting event in the state of Oregon, and it's a magnificent record crowd here today as we watch John Andretti, who now runs 5th after starting 12th. He's had a spectacular race thus far, his fastest lap at 110 miles an hour, and he is right on the game plan with a single stop. This is the fastest man in the race thus far. It is Michael Andretti as he comes up behind his father Mario to try and put Mario a lap down. Michael has the fastest lap of the race at 112 miles an hour. Emerson Fittipaldi, caught in traffic, is about 5.5 seconds back behind Michael. Michael has dominated the race, being the leader right from the green flag.
Now remember, Mario has his own handling problems with that broken front wing, but he's in a battle with Scott Goodyear, the blue car right ahead of him. So he won't want to back off too much. So Michael may have a little bit of trouble here trying to pass Mario.
Update now, Mario Andretti, Gary.
Yeah, Paul, we mentioned that Wickerbill change on the pit stop. He went to the smaller Wickerbill, which would be less downforce on the rear. What I'm wondering, would that be to try to compensate any difficulty because of the damage to the front wing?
Oh, I'm sure it is.
That's exactly what it would be, Gary. And the reason they would do that is because it's a lot less time-consuming than trying to change those front wings.
Now the ongoing battle for 7th place between Scott Goodyear and Mario Andretti, holding up the leader, Michael, as we've got a car to the side. Looks to be Robbie Gordon, who has teamed up with Eddie Cheever in the Ganassi stable this week, and Robbie wants them to come get him and get him back into the fight, and he's not at all happy about their lack of reaction.
Frustration, frustration. We're going to take a look at what happens here. He's behind Raul Boesel. He's 5th in line here, and he loses it under braking. He actually clipped the back of Boesel's car, but Robbie Gordon loses it. Looks like he locked those rear brakes before he actually turned into the apex of that corner.
Chip Ganassi, the car owner, on Route Robbie Gordon's car. He was running 10th just prior to that spin going into the chicane at the end of the pit straightaway. The fight continues here with Michael Andretti looking for an opportunity to get around his father as the yellow flags come out all the way around the track. The pace car will come out. That will help Mario Andretti's position because they should position the pace car right in front of Michael Andretti and let Mario and Scott Goodyear come all the way around the track to close up behind. We'll watch very carefully for the positioning of that IndyCar pace car as they try to get Robbie Gordon out of the way.
And Michael spent 2 or 3 laps trying to get by Mario, but tell me this, how do you get mad at your dad on Father's Day when he won't let you by?
I don't think you can do that.
I don't think you can do
wrong. Robbie Gordon back under power. Now under this full course yellow, let's get an update on another situation. Danny Sullivan has now made 3 pit stops. Is that right, Jan Beekes?
That's right, Paul. This full course yellow will really help Danny. He had to come in again because a wheel nut got stuck underneath. A spare wheel nut got stuck underneath the car. This also is a very special wheel nut. It's specially designed. It has 5 different types of carbon, or I should say ceramic components in there. What that does is that makes it a harder Rockwell. What Rockwell is, that's a Rockwell test where they push a diamond into it and see how much it compresses. This has to be harder than the stud, or the car and the wheel will not come off, and so now they can change wheels quickly down here in the Gallus pit.
Well, there's Danny Sullivan, the Gallus-Craco operation. Molson on the rear of the car there, number 18, as he circles the track. And he is 1 lap behind these gentlemen, the leaders of the race, led by a dominating Michael Andretti. 42 laps complete. This race, of course, is part of the annual Portland Rose Festival here. Look at those beautiful flowers. Grandiflora, tea roses, climbing roses. You asked for it, you've got it here in Portland. Since the Indianapolis 500, of course, in May, he took his very first win at the Indy 500. And since that time, he's been on the road quite a bit. A lot of appearances. It takes a tremendous amount of time for the IndyCar champion.
Interesting, he has some support on both sides of the cockpit to support his helmet. Such are the high G-force loads created by these cars that Alonso Jr. now has supports for his helmet and also his head on both sides of the cockpit. You can see them built up when we get a sideways shot.
Was there little Al circling the track? Parade June 10th in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Gigantic crowd for him there. Not just for him, but for Dad. Even Bobby was in this particular crowd. And then, of course, it's also a traditional visit to New York and an opportunity to appear on the Dave Letterman show.
Scott kind of surprised me because I couldn't figure out who the number 15 was.
Buy a program. Just look through it before the race.
Yeah, well, I just, you know, I saw this 15 climbing up the board more and more and more on the big tower that's on the front straightaway.
Yeah.
And you keep an eye on that, and every now and then it'll shut off and go blank when they don't have any kind of scoring. But I just saw this number going up further and further and further, and then finally he was in second place. Yeah. And he was right in front of me, and I saw the car finally, and I said, that's who that is. This is the guy,
yeah. Now, do your mirrors say objects may be closer than they appear?
Generally, when you see those in the mirrors, they're coming real fast. We'll be back for the green.
Dear Wendy, I'm really enjoying...
Still under the full course yellow, a report of a possible display of fire at the back of Scott Goodyear's car here. And there indeed it is, down inside. Looks like it's right there at the constant velocity joint. Same sort of thing that happened in Detroit 2 weeks ago. Exactly the same place.
And sometimes the wind can blow fires out, so he needs to get under full speed very quickly here. But that could get a hold of the carbon fiber very easily. He could be in deep trouble again.
And apparently he recognizes it because he gives way to Mario Andretti, who comes up alongside of him. And I think his intent, as we watch Derek Walker, the car owner, is to get off the track and get into the pits and try and find out what the problem is, because fire, of course, on a race car can be very dangerous as the green flag comes out once again. And Michael Andretti scores his way back into the lead. He's maintained the lead of this this race right from the start. And Emerson Fittipaldi gets tangled up for a second with Raul Boesel as they head into the chicane. And Scott Goodyear stayed out on the course and has taken the green flag.
And Emerson
and
was
Brian Till's in trouble again.
He went straight on. We just saw that at the top of the picture. He didn't make the chicane at all. But you're right. You mentioned about Emerson. He went down under Boesel. Boesel turned down and finally realized before they made contact that Emerson was there. He turned back and let him go.
They're showing the black flag to Scott Goodyear's car. That's the flag, of course, that advises him to come into the pits for consultation. And both the pit crew and the officials will be there to take a look at that display of fire on the back of the car, see if perhaps it went out under speed or whether or not it needs further attention. Michael Andretti on the pit straight, completing his 47th lap of the 102 laps, the scheduled distance here. He has led all 47 laps. Michael has completed his first pit stop, as have most of the front runners. In fact, they've all completed at least one. The question will be keeping an eye on the sequence of Bobby Rahal's stops, because Rahal was able to stop a little bit earlier. In Portland, you would run a car that says the Bulls on the side of the car. Well, Dale Coyne, the Chicago owner of this car, certainly would.
And certainly did cause a lot of conversation in the pit lane this morning when that card appeared with the Chicago Bulls logo on it. But however, they're from Chicago. MyJack, their sponsor, is an Illinois-based company. Eric Batchelor in a learning curve with Dale Coyne and this new team. Batchelor, of course, a winner of the Firestone Indy Lights Championship last year and has moved up this year to the world of IndyCar racing.
And Eric in the 19 car currently running in 13th place. As there comes Raul Boesel around.
Boesel probably not having the day that he would have wanted. Remember, he was so spectacular at Detroit. He had a lot of trouble in Friday's practice with the steering on this car. He was good in the morning warm-up this morning, but he really hasn't had the type of pace that he had hoped for and that maybe Dick Simon had expected from Boesel this afternoon.
I tell you what, that car did get a lot of reaction from the generally trailblazer supporting crowd that is here in Oregon. At the front of the field, once again, it is Michael Andretti. Clear sailing ahead. The field bunched up under that yellow flag, full course caution, the only full course of the day.
And again, we saw a quick glimpse of the neck support and the helmet support that Michael uses also on his in-car camera, again, because of the G-forces.
Scott Goodyear, the report of the fire, an update from Jan Beekes.
They did give him the black flag, Paul. He came in, they checked it out. It turned out it was just what Derek Walker was trying to tell CART was the problem. And that was that when the car's running around slow during the caution period, he heated up some shrink tubing, something they put around the suspension pieces. It was just smoking. There wasn't a problem. He said the fire they had in Detroit, not at all related to this one.
Well, it was more than smoking. We definitely saw a display of flames there, but apparently, though, once they get up to speed, the thing is gone, just as you suggested, Derek.
Interesting there's that little support that Michael has, that little Kmart Haviland decal on the side of it. Now, what's interesting to me is Michael has it on the right side of the helmet, and it's a right-handed circuit. I would have thought it would be on the left side, so maybe Michael used it for some other reason.
Michael Andretti, car number 1, looking for a win. He's had a terrible season thus far and looks for a change in his luck.
I just realized the reason. The advertising hoarding.
No.
That's what it is.
Which came first, the camera or
the check?
Michael Andretti running just a little loose through that corner and is running a very smooth race. Emerson Fittipaldi is his nearest competitor, about a half a second back, but currently not in contact with the leader of the race. Now, here's a driver's summary. Again, this is a computer-generated series that comes from the EDS system, which is the official timing and scoring system here on the track. And they simply take the information, they put it through a computer, and it comes out and gives you wonderful information like this.
Now,
the information the one computer is giving us, though, is that the interval is now 1/10 of a second.
Right.
First to second.
Emerson is about to give Michael all he can handle. Just like earlier in the race, after about 6 or 7 laps, everything settles down, and Emerson reels him in. When they got in traffic the last time, they got disjointed a little bit, but Emerson Fittipaldi looks very, very strong.
So Fittipaldi tries to close and get in contact with Michael, but he still has some distance to go. This year, Michael's team has been plagued with technical problems. We asked him how this has affected his preparation for the races.
unfortunately, when that happens, it does screw up your whole schedule because you want to be learning, and when you're sitting on the sidelines and giving away minutes and hours of not being able to run while everybody else is, it puts you behind. And I think Detroit was a perfect example. I think we needed a few more things to try, and I think we would have had a little bit of an edge, but we didn't. We just had enough to get the pole, but not to have a comfortable race car for the race. And, even here at Portland, missing that practice, there were some things we wanted to try, and that's just 2 more things or 3 more things that we're not going to be able to try throughout the weekend because we're going to run out of time. So it definitely hurt.
The last time that Michael flashed over the start-finish line, he completed the 51st lap, or the halfway point in this race. In doing so, if he can maintain that position through the next lap, he will pick up a very important single point for leading the most laps in the run.
And Vinizio Salmi makes his way fairly slowly into the pit lane. They're going to have a look at what's wrong with him. This is the Euro Motorsports car run by Antonio Ferrari. No relationship to the great Ferrari family that builds the cars in Italy. But Salmi doesn't look as if he's going to have too much luck for the rest of the afternoon.
Crew had him shut the car down, and he's going to be climbing out shortly. They've found something more than routine as they reach down and get the car out of gear, and Vinizio climbs out of the cockpit as that's Brian Till going in and out of the pits quickly. That is the stop-and-go penalty that he suffered.
And this is the problem area right here when you come out of the pit lane on cold tires. We saw the problems earlier. Everything gets sideways as we watch Emerson's daughter watch Dad fight a very good, strong second place.
Emerson has all but one of his family here for Father's Day this weekend. He currently runs in second place. Allenser Jr. third, followed by Cheever and John Andretti. We'll be back. Andretti as he pursues Raul Boesel. Not a battle for position, but one that is keenly important to John because he needs to get past Boesel, who is running off the pace on the pit straight now. Boesel at full chat. John Andretti moves to the inside, tries him into the chicane, moves around Boesel, and continues now his pursuit of Eddie Cheever. Let's go to the pits and Gary.
Well, an update on Jimmy Vasser. Derek talked about the injured drivers in this race today. Of course, 3.5 weeks after a broken leg at Indianapolis, back in the car, qualified 16th. The crew is working to pack up the gear here. Jimmy Vasser got off course. The kart safety workers picked him up, but they dropped him off in the Trans Am paddock, which is down at the other side and on the outside of the course. And the poor guy without his crutches, with a broken leg that's recovering, is stranded there and can't get back to his crew or to the paddock area. We'd love to talk to Jimmy, but he's on the other side of the racetrack, a long way from home right now. But the mere fact that he was out here trying to race, recovering 3.5 weeks later from a broken leg, I think is astounding.
Well, Gary, get your car and go over there and get Jimmy Vasser. Poor kid. There's Ross Cheever, Derek.
One of the things that Vasser changed, just a quick update on him, he's a classic road race style racer. They use the right foot. He used his left foot here at Portland in an attempt to give that right leg as much of a rest as possible.
You know, a major announcement was made at this track yesterday as Bill Stokan, the chairman of IndyCar, announced that PPG Industries, who has been the only series sponsor in the history of IndyCar and kart previous to it, has renewed for another year with an option for 2 more years beyond that. So that's very good news. What a great sponsor PPG Industries is for a series sponsor. And boy, they've sunk a lot of money into this sport.
They really have. Now back to the leading battle. Emerson is keeping Michael honest all day long. This is a great battle for the lead position here. Michael cannot afford to make the slightest mistake because Emerson will pounce. This is heavy braking down to second gear. Now the slowest corner on the racetrack, 40 miles an hour on the concrete, off the asphalt, and away you go to the infield double apex right-handers. Look at Emerson's shadow every move Michael makes.
Michael Andretti in front of the field. The Penske driver Emerson Fittipaldi right behind him in second place. Roger Penske has to split his interests on a weekend like this between his IndyCar racing team and his Winston Cup team, and the fact that he's also the promoter of the Michigan 400 at Michigan International Speedway this year, where Davey Allison has won, followed by Darrell Waltrip and Alan Kulwicki, Kyle Petty in fourth, Ricky Rudd in fifth. The Indy cars then go from Michigan, or the Winston Cup cars then go from Michigan, several of them, for a tire test at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Which you and I may just attend on Monday or on Tuesday.
I think tomorrow we just may be there.
The question running around, of course, is what speed will the NASCAR cars do, the Winston Cup cars do at Indianapolis? It's hard to know. People speculate between 150 miles and 165 miles an hour.
And one thing you do have to guard against is speculating, because there's no indication that it's anything other than a tire test. The rest of the schedule, of course, in a week, they're in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin State Fairgrounds, for coverage on the mile there. That'll be covered on ABC Sports. And then July 5th, the very first race at Loudon, New Hampshire, back here on ESPN. Then on to Toronto, Canada, to the Michigan 500 at Brooklyn, Michigan. And then Cleveland, Ohio on the 9th of August. A nice full summer schedule. On the 23rd, Road America, Elkhart Lake. Then up north to Vancouver, Canada, to the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course at Lexington. Then the Marlboro Challenge, as well as the race on the October 4th weekend at Nazareth, and they wrap the season up in the traditional wrap-up at Laguna Seca.
Al Jr. continues to run in a strong third place, up over the curves at the end of the back straight. This Galmer car, they worked very hard on this. Remember, street circuits was its forte. But this is a very, very sensitive car, which in turn makes it very difficult to set up sometimes. So Al Jr. struggled a little bit. He followed Danny Sullivan's setup, got the two of them onto the second row of the grid. Sullivan now is in trouble, but Al Jr. very consistent.
Let's go down to the pits once again. An update from Jan Beekes.
Paul, we're starting to have a battle develop up at the front, and it's a Ford versus Chevrolet battle. Remember back in Australia, we talked about the difference between that Chevy Indy B and the Chevy Indy A. This is a Chevy Indy A, and of course, Emerson Fittipaldi is catching Michael with that Chevy Indy B. Here this weekend, they're already talking about the Chevy Indy C. That is, they're going to make an engine that will rival the Ford in size. This is 2 inches smaller. The next one will be 5 inches smaller. Now you won't have to have a different car if it's a Ford, if it's a Chevy. It's the only engine they're going to produce next year. The C, higher revs, small package. It's their response to the way the Fords are running right now.
I tell you what, the marketing people can't keep up with the engine development. I'm a great collector of pins, and Chevrolet is just now getting out its Chevrolet B engine pin, and already the engine department is building the C engine.
It's absolutely interesting. We see Ray Hall back in the hunt here, sliding down.
Bobby Rahal comes inside of Rick Mears in the chicane. Rahal still trying to make up ground as best he can, and Mears wisely sees Rahal there and lets him take the inside position.
I'm not sure Mears was convinced he was going to allow him down the inside. They went side by side in through the right-hander, but eventually he thought better of it and did let him go.
I think what happened with Mears is first he saw Rahal and says, wait a minute, where is he in the race? Normally he's on the lead lap. Then it clicks. No, Rahal is at least 2, in fact 4 laps behind the lead.
And it's not for position. Just to expand a little bit on what Jan Beekes said about the physical size of these engines. The Ford engine that's in Michael's car is very small. That gives them distinct advantages. When it's that small, the tunnels underneath can be made wider, giving more downforce. That's an advantage. Also, the bodywork on the top of this car, because the engine is so small, the bodywork is much smaller. That's less drag. That's another advantage. That's the reason Chevrolet are going to build a new engine.
The leaders of the race, Michael Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi, separated by 11 seconds now from third place, Al Unser Jr. Later today here on ESPN, of course, we'll be followed by SportsCenter, and then baseball tonight, and then the game, the New York Yankees versus the Baltimore Orioles. All later tonight, right here on ESPN. Michael Andretti still out in front. 60 laps are complete. Fittipaldi second, Little Al third, Eddie Cheever fourth, John Andretti runs in 5th. Now very closely by Emerson Fittipaldi. Little Al runs in 3rd, followed by Eddie Cheever and John Andretti. And Emerson Fittipaldi has been doing all he can to try to move up and get around Michael Andretti. Jimmy Vasser, as we mentioned, was dropped off by the safety crews a long way from his pit. Well, he's finally made it back to the IndyCar pit area, and Gary Gerould is with him.
Well, indeed, he has made it back. He's got those crutches for some support. How painful was it, Jimmy? And in hindsight, did you try to come back too soon?
Well, you know, I'm a racer and I love to race, and I don't think it was a little too soon. The doctors gave me clearance, and they assured me that it wasn't going to prolong the healing process. We're out there running, and we settled into a little groove, and I was game to go on, but we had some problem with the fuel system, and we lost fuel pressure, and it ended our race day. It's unfortunate for our sponsors, Vital Care and Viking Industries, and along with a local sponsor, U.S. Bank, because they all came out and supported us this weekend, and we wanted to try to make it to the finish, so it's a little unfortunate.
All right, go get some rest. We'll look forward to you down the road. I believe Toronto is your next race.
That's right, Gary. Thanks a lot.
All right, Paul.
Very likable young man, Jimmy Vasser, came back nice and strong, gave that car a good ride today. Now, IndyCar teams strive constantly to develop their cars mechanically and aerodynamically the best they can. Gary Gerould takes a look at how the 92 gearboxes dissipate from last year.
A major change in this year's IndyCar focuses around a redesigned gearbox on the Lola chassis. For comparison purposes, take a look here at a 1991 gearbox. This is Scott Goodyear's backup car. Notice how big and how bulky this steel casing is in comparison to the 1992 gearbox. Much trimmer, sleeker, actually much smaller here at the rear of the box, which has cleaned up the air exiting the car and has created some dramatic aerodynamic gains in terms of downforce. What the engineers actually did was reposition the gears within the casing. It used to be that the big gears were located at the rear of the gearbox. Now they've been moved forward. They've trimmed down the package. But in doing so, they encountered a variety of problems. Virtually every team using this gearbox early in the season, either in competition or in testing, experienced significant gearbox difficulties. The problem being, with the torque that's created by these cars coming off a corner, with the downforce that's created by the rear wing, if you get any flexing or bending within the unit, these shafts, you have the possibility of misalignment. And you misalign these gears, and sooner or later, they'll wear together, a tooth will be chipped off, you get one of these floating around in here, and it's only a matter of time until it jams up the gearbox, it's inoperative, and the driver is out of the race. What do the engineers do? Well, they beefed up the mounting studs. They made some changes internally in the selection forks. They think now that they've minimized the risk of gearbox damage.
He runs the front of this race as he tries to thread his way through traffic. And Michael comes down inside of Ross Cheever, driving for A.J. Foyt. And Cheever is startled by that and gets pushed off the course. But Ross Cheever gets right back into the fight.
And in fairness to Ross, I think he did see Michael. He just moved way too high, got out into the marbles, lost his grip, and then there was no option but to straighten the car and drive over the top of the grass, just like Mario did earlier.
Michael Andretti, the car skates just a bit as we take a look at the Valvoline summary here. After 65 laps, you saw Roger Penske's team ready. You see Eddie Cheever's car into the pits for what should be routine service.
Cheever's he's had a good day, running in a good 4th place.
Let's go to Gary Gerould.
They get the final drops of fuel in. 16.5 seconds on our clock here for that stop as we go to Jan Beekes.
Rick Mears brings it in. You can see he still has that damage. That is Billy Camphausen, who's checking to make sure the car will be okay with that front end damage. He is coming a little bit early. This is a surprise. His teammate Emerson Fittipaldi running in 2nd place. He's in much earlier than anyone expected. Paul, if he is in this early, that means he cannot make it to the end of the race. He's going to have to come in for a splash and go. This will make a huge difference for the battle for the lead. He drops it down and he's out of here.
And that's exactly what you suggested at starting, that if the fuel economy didn't work right, then we would see a 3rd stop, and it seems like Fittipaldi may have locked himself to a 3rd stop already.
And the only thing Emerson is now interested in is how fast he can be on his outlap on cold tires, and can he beat Michael? Can Michael have problems when he makes his pit stop, which he's about to do, and possibly on this lap?
Well, the Newman-Haas team traditionally is very good at stretching the mileage and carrying the car just as far as they can. Michael Andretti has not yet made the 2nd stop of his race as Fittipaldi goes off off the course and gets back on. Cold tires again.
This is what we said. Cold tires, you got to try and make up as much time as possible on your outlap from the pits. But Emerson almost got himself in trouble.
Michael's in. Gary is there.
Paul, they made the decision to bring him in after Emerson had made his stop because Michael was in a lot of traffic on the race course. They hope when he gets out, he'll have more of a clear track. They think that he can go the distance. It would mean 33 laps, I believe, if our math is right. The conclusion, he's out of here in 17 seconds.
Emerson Fittipaldi over on the backside of the circuit as he comes on to the pit straight now as Michael rolls out of the pits. Here comes Fittipaldi. There's Fittipaldi just behind Michael, but Michael should be able to get up to speed. And there is Danny Sullivan sitting just ahead now of Emerson Fittipaldi.
And Danny had all sorts of problems earlier on. He had a bad vibration in the car. He had loose body work. Now he seems to be back up to speed. But just look how much Emerson lost on that trip through the boondocks into the grass.
Well, and let's not forget that Danny Sullivan is a lap off the lead. That's not a position situation there. Al Unser Jr. scored currently by the EDS system as leader of the race. So as Al Unser Jr. found another way yet to win with the new Galmer car this year. Remember that great run at Long Beach only to be caught up short on the final lap by his own teammate Danny Sullivan. And then the truly spectacular run at the Indianapolis 500 this May, the closest finish in history there over Scott Goodyear. So Danny Sullivan, as we keep an eye on him, circles, as does Al Unser Jr. and Little Al's crew now lays out. And when Little Al comes in, that should give the lead of the race back to Michael Andretti, and Emerson Fittipaldi is about 7 seconds back. The question is, will Al Unser Jr. make it that far? And if he does, then does he make this a two-stop race as opposed to the other participants in the front of the field, Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti?
Al Jr. tends to be a very casual personality. I asked him, did he do anything exciting after Detroit, between Detroit and here? He says, yeah. He said, I mowed 30 acres of grass at my home.
So Al Unser Jr. over on the backside of the course now as he makes the final couple of turns into the big sweeping carousel that will bring him onto the pit straight, and he should cut early over to the right. Still the leader of the race as he enters the pit, but Michael Andretti is very definitely on the charge. John Beekes is there as Al Unser Jr. stops.
Little Al brings it to a stop. He gets a drink of water. Paul, they think they can definitely make the distance. This is the lap they wanted to come in. They will not have to come in again. So, Paul, this is where the strategy unfolds. It'll be yet to see whether Emerson and Michael will have to make another stop. Oh, he kills it. They're trying to push to get him restarted. Oh, there we go. Lost a few seconds, but the team got him refired. Paul?
Great teamwork. Terrible hesitation as now Al Unser Jr. comes back in the fight, but you saw Michael Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi both get past on the pit straight while Little Al was still in the pits.
And he was so lucky to get away with that.
Mario Andretti is in. Gary Gerald's there.
Well, back in the mid-'80s, Mario won this race twice. Great Father's Day presence. Going to be tough to win it again for a third time today, but he's still competitive despite the injuries to the toes. After surgery just last Wednesday, he's out of the pits just under 16 seconds on his final stop.
Mario Andretti came in running in 6th place, so now he slams it up through the gears. And here's Little Al's stop, and then the problem at the end of it, Derek.
So lucky he got away with it. We mentioned earlier they rev these engines almost to the rev limiter, on the rev limiter many times, but Al Jr., the clutches are so severe when they grab. Scott Pruitt goes mowing the grass too, but Al Jr., we mentioned these clutches are so severe when they grab. If you don't have enough revs on, you can kill the engine. He was so lucky he got away with it.
Scott Pruitt off and on the course. Pruitt not in contention at the front of the field, and that little off-course excursion is going to cost him even more. Pruitt is currently running in 10th place. Here is John Andretti. He is currently running in 3rd place with that hesitation and Little Al's stop. And so John Andretti, the VDS Pennzoil crew, overseen there by Jim Hall as they try to get that car back into the action. He fires up and a routine stop. But remember, he's pitted well down the line, and some of these cars have had a little trouble coming out of the pits on new tires and getting through the chicane. But John Andretti takes it very carefully and gives an open line.
Something else we should mention, the normal thing when the mechanics are finished doing their job, they run around to the rear wing of the car, for exactly the reason that Al Unser Jr. showed us. If the driver kills it, everybody's behind the car to push it and help him get him restarted.
Michael Andretti is averaging 103.8 miles an hour. Because of the change in the course, every lap turned is a new record.
He's waiting about a car length and a half behind Al.
With a very quiet race car, rolls for the pits.
Hoping to do a full season. His main backer is Rent-A-Center from Wichita, Kansas. And of course, one of their main items is this 1-800 karaoke, which is all the rage now. That sing-along video item that his wife Shanna and my wife Beth became imaginary rock stars with in Indy when they sang along with it.
Running in 21st place. Looks like his day may be coming to an end, but then again, it may just be a splash of fuel to get Jeff Wood back into the fight, but one would think not. It would be that there might be something even more seriously wrong with the car. We'll keep track of Jeff Wood's day as well for you. Here is Danny Sullivan. This is Danny Sullivan's 4th stop. Now remember, it's 4 because he had one because of a wheel nut under the car and another at stop and go. But this might put Danny in a pretty nice position to run for the finish without having to stop, but he's a lap behind the leaders.
And Danny Sullivan took a nice cool drink, something unusual for him. He doesn't usually do that, but he said this morning it is so hot he expects to lose 6 or 7 pounds this afternoon. That's why he said, yes, I do want to have a nice cold drink during the race.
Danny Sullivan currently runs in 8th place. The leader of the race, Michael Andretti. Another spectacular run going. But the way Michael's luck has been, there comes Danny Sullivan. And oh no, Sullivan again right out of the pits.
Locks up those rear brakes as he turns into the corner, gets off the line into the gray area and backs her very slowly over the marker cones and back up into the chicane.
End of a full lap running around this course for Sullivan on a hot day as Ross Bentley goes in and out of the pits. Wouldn't that have been enough to heat the tires?
I would have thought so, but if the rear brakes locked up, that alone would have put him off the road.
And Ross Cheever comes flying around John Andretti as Ross Bentley comes back up to speed. All of the teams now completing their 2nd stop, but for many, perhaps not the final stop of the race. And that may be the single factor that affects the outcome of this run. Again, Michael Andretti out in front. There you see John Andretti as he chases Ross Cheever, though it is not a fight for position. In fact, it's another Cheever that John should be worried about because Eddie Cheever runs in 4th place while John runs in 5th.
And there's Ross Cheever, moved over earlier for Michael, ran off the racetrack. Now he moves over for John. He's in a steep learning curve. Interestingly enough, Ross Cheever had a lot of difficulty getting used to these engines. He doesn't race turbocharged cars very often because he races in Japan, a place he doesn't like that much, but he said he's been there for 6 years and now he's getting used to it.
Bobby Rahal still runs in 14th, not in the points, trying to work his way up through the field. If Rahal stays here, he won't earn a point out of this race, and the race would finish with Rahal with 79 points, and Al Unser Jr. and Emerson Fittipaldi will close on Rahal with 74 for Jr. and 70 for Fittipaldi. That's if the race would end right now. Let's go to the pits and Gary Gerould.
Well, you're talking about anticipating who can go the distance. If there's a need to come in for a splash of fuel, that's all that's left for the race leader, Michael Andretti. Here's the hose. You see these red marks? 1 gallon, 2 gallons, 3 gallons, and that's where you see the fuel runs out. 3 gallons left if Andretti needs it. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Bobby Rahal brings it to a stop. It is true that he's running out of the points, Paul, but he only has to get up to 12th. If he can get to 12th place, he will start collecting some points. So they're still racing just as hard as if it were for the lead, but it's much further back. They wait for every bit of fuel, and he's underway. That was a 14.7 stop, Paul.
So that little off-course excursion early in the going and a long time to get back on the course cost Bobby Rahal, who has been so consistent thus far this year, cost him dearly here at Portland.
And it is such a frustrating thing for a driver because remember, the physical effort and exertion he puts out to run 14th is just the same as if he didn't make that mistake and was running in the top 2 or 3 as we watch Scott Goodyear.
8th place, Scott Pruitt in the pits now in the True Sports car as this looks like his final and fairly routine stop. Fuel hose is disconnected and Scott's back into the fight.
I knew it was one of those, Scotts. Interestingly enough, I spoke to Dennis Swan and he said The development program is still continuing on this Made in America car, even though Steve Horn, the pioneer of this whole project, has left and gone on to other things.
That's good, because that's an effort I truly admire. I like the Made in America concept. Eddie Cheever circles the track, running in 4th place, trying to catch up to race anyone he can, and his object would be Al Unser Jr. as we get a glimpse of Danny Sullivan now back at full chat after his problem in this very turn a lap ago. And now here comes Cheever. Sullivan, of course, is well off the pace, running in 11th place now as a result of his problems throughout this day. Michael Andretti is still the leader of the race.
Eddie Cheever still working to get that elusive first IndyCar win, working very closely with his engineer Mo Nunn. It takes a little bit of time for Mo Nunn and Cheever to understand each other, but the better they do, the more closely they work together, the better they can extract information from each other. Now as he crawls over the back of Danny Sullivan, but Cheever still anxious to get that first win, and of course if he gets it, it'll be the first win for Ford.
Sullivan sees his friend from his same hometown, Aspen, Colorado, and says, Eddie, come on past. I'm not running in the lead lap, you are. And so he waves Eddie Cheever past. So Danny Sullivan continues to circulate, but runs well behind the lead, a full lap and a half down behind the leaders of the race.
Good speed shot of Cheever's car. Remember, this is one of the Ford engine cars, one of those specially designed chassis that are much smaller in size and physical size at the back end of the car in particular than the regular Lola Chevrolet cars.
Driver summary from EDS, the official scoring system here. By the way, the computers have done some wonderful stuff. EDS has been working with us here on the broadcast to make sure that this kind of information is available to you, and there's even more and greater stuff coming in the future. Good information to help make these races even more interesting. But right now, the focus on the track itself. Michael Andretti with his father lined up just behind him, because Michael just put his father 1 lap down. So everyone first through 5th on the leader lap. Mario Andretti runs in 6th and is 1 lap behind the lead.
And that was definitely a bit of a slide job on Mario, because Michael was behind him under heavy braking for that chicane. Yet when they went right and left, Michael somehow managed to slide through. But now Mario's 1 lap down. Michael is in control, and Emerson is now starting this long trek up again to try and catch Michael, because he's now about 7 seconds behind Michael.
Emerson Fittipaldi 7.8 seconds behind Michael. The question is fuel, Jan Vikas.
That's right, Paul. We got a report from Gary Gerald as to how much fuel Michael Andretti had. It was about 3 gallons. Emerson Fittipaldi in almost the same circumstance. Here's the hose. There's only the fuel that's left in the hose. It's marked 3 gallons right here. Looks like he has about 3.5. So stop and go, or I should say a quick splash and go, is not going to help Emerson very much. They've already radioed to him. You're going to have to back off on the boost a little bit, or we won't make it till the end.
And is not, Jan Vikas, to ask you a further question, is it not the best guess that everyone at the front of the field will have to splash and go just before the finish?
Trying to do, Paul, what they're trying to do is they're trying to avoid having to come into splash and go. They're trying to save enough fuel so they can finish the race, leaving the 3.5 gallons here.
So they're still trying to battle away from that, Derek.
And it's the Al Unser Jr. car that we're going to watch most closely, because he was the last one of the leading pack to stop. He's the one that is going to try and stretch it all the way, hoping to make just a 2-stop race.
So my question would be whether or not that team actually thinks they can make it all the way. We know that Rick Gallis in the past has most definitely gambled on fuel, and a number of times it's paid off. They really love to roll the dice over at Gallis Traco Racing. So Michael Andretti runs in front, followed by Emerson Fittipaldi, Little Al in 3rd, Eddie Cheever in 4th, and John Andretti in 5th. And here in Portland, the crown point of the city, and the point of view down to the Columbia Gorge and the Columbia River. There is some spectacular scenery around Portland. We enjoy all of it. To be Marozzo as the yellow flags fly, and Danny Sullivan got in trouble just ahead of him.
And this is an interesting scenario here. Everybody seems to be locking up the rear brakes before they actually turn in to this very tight new chicane complex. Sullivan seemed to do it. He backed those rear wheels off into the gravel trap, and then Marozzo does it. It's happened too many times.
Jan Vigas said right at the start of the run that chicane would definitely have an effect on the race, and it has. This is the same situation. Another view of it.
That's Cheever, and yes, Sullivan arrives already going backwards. Now let's see what's going to happen. Here's another one. Locks up the rear brakes and loses it.
Rear brakes, or is maybe they're a dab of oil there on the course?
It could be, but there seems to be happening too many times.
Two cars go out with that long of interval in between them.
Yeah, it could well be.
So we'll keep an eye on that first corner leading into the chicane after the long pit straightaway here. As we look at the order once again, Michael Andretti continues to dominate this race, but that we've seen him do before. The question now is, can he continue to hold on to the end of the race? Remember the Indy 500, within 25 miles of the finish. Michael Andretti was in this very same position, and then suddenly and without warning, something breaks in the car. They said it was a fuel pump that let go. Just shut the engine down right there.
And fuel is the operative word as Michael closes in on the back of Bobby Rahal. That's the rear wishbone we see there of Rahal's car. But Michael's crew is asking him in every lap to give the fuel readings from the digital dashboard that he has in front of him, in front of the steering wheel there. They need the fuel readings every lap.
We were wondering the state of fuel in Al Unser Jr.'s car, Jan Beekes.
Well, one thing nice about clear hoses, Paul, is you can come down and just take a look and find out right what everybody has. Interestingly enough, is that Al Unser Jr. came in a lap later, but he has 4 gallons of fuel in the hose, meaning that he has about the same, or I should say better fuel economy than the front two. If they have to back off to make it to the finish, he can run flat out the whole way. Could make a big difference in the last few laps.
Al Unser Jr. runs in 3rd place. He is 30 seconds behind the leader, Michael Andretti, and 23 seconds behind Emerson Fittipaldi. So the front of the field all stretched out at this moment in the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200. No one is in contact with one another in terms of fighting for position. But as you can see, Michael is closing up on the back of Bobby Rahal and looking to put Rahal yet another lap down.
And I don't think Rahal will fight off Michael, and I don't think Michael will be too aggressive trying to get by Rahal, because remember, it's not for a pass. The interesting thing on that fuel story, their crew, Al Unser Jr.'s team, does not believe that Al Jr. will have to make a stop and go or a splash and go for fuel in the last couple of laps here.
Michael Andretti comes to the inside, gets around Bobby Rahal, and continues his lead of the race. It'll be Emerson Fittipaldi that will come up next behind Rahal's car. You got a glimpse there of Carl Haas, the co-owner of Michael's team, along with Paul Newman, as he worries his way around the track with his driver, Michael Andretti, hoping at this point that nothing goes wrong. And take a look. There is Emerson Fittipaldi, the number 5 car, lined up just behind Ross Cheever. He'll have to handle Cheever up first. By the way, the Cheever family, this is the first time, despite the fact they're both professional racing drivers, that Ross and Eddie have ever been on the same track in competition with one another.
That's right. And of course, Eddie is Ross's biggest supporter in racing. Ross, as we said earlier, races in Japan in the Formula 3000 series over there. Won one of the races this year and is currently leading that championship. But he doesn't think he'll have enough time in his schedule to come back and race any more IndyCar races this year.
Of course, this car, Ross Cheever, running very loose at that moment, owned by A.J. Foyt, as Emerson Fittipaldi is now able to overhaul him. And A.J. Foyt is planning a very, very large auction. He's already done a little bit of work on it. And what are the items? Well, things like this beautiful Cadillac and race cars, and you name it. And A.J. Foyt is going to sell it. So A.J. is planning to sell any one of these machines. Boy, wouldn't that look great in your garage? But the question, of course, is when you own all this wonderful stuff, AJ, why are you going to get rid of all these magnificent race cars at an auction?
Well, actually, I just can't keep the cars up anymore. You know, I just don't have time or the manpower, and I just hate to see them just sitting here and collecting dust. And a lot of people, you know, still want to race some of the cars and some of the vintage races. And like I say, when I quit, I'm not going to crawl back in one.
I tell you what, I wonder, you saw the #1 Sheridan Thompson Special that he won Indy in there, that front engine Watson Roadster. I would give anything to be the possessor of a Watson Roadster. I've talked to Watson in the pits. He says every now and then he welds up another one, and you can get one. Boy, they are terrific race cars. Here's the driver summary on Ross Cheever, who's moved up 4 positions since the start of the race, playing it very careful. Still trying to learn his way around, as Derek Daly suggested, the power plants on these machines. Running a little loose in the last couple laps, but doing a very nice job here today. Let's go to the pits, get an update from Gary.
Well, you're talking about A.J. Foyt. A.J. went to his first live concert this week when one of his country heroes, Garth Brooks, was in Portland. A.J. said he couldn't believe how loud it was. He loved the music, but he said the crowd was louder than my Indy car at 13,000 revs. The man loves his country music, however.
So A.J. took in the Garth Brooks show. A pretty good show, by the way. A.J. Foyt watches his driver for this race, Ross Cheever, the current leader in the points in the All-Japan Formula 3000 Series. Now 90 laps of the 102 lap scheduled distance are complete. Michael still in front. Now we look back and look for Emerson Fittipaldi, and there he is right behind Bobby Rahal. That's the second place car. The interval as they came across the line, nearly 8 seconds that Fittipaldi has to make up now in the final 10 laps of this race.
So he is not able to close in on Michael with sheer speed. Now the only thing he can turn to is hoping that Michael will get delayed in a traffic situation. So move up to Michael's position. He cannot take any chances whatsoever. Remember Detroit, when he took too many chances, bounced off the walls and lost everything. There are valuable championship points to be had here for Michael today, but he has to be a little bit conservative.
The question, of course, is still Al Unser Jr. It is possible, we've indicated that both Michael Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi will have to stop sometime in these next 10 laps for a splash of fuel to carry them on to the finish of the race. But the best indication might be that Al Unser Jr. doesn't have to. In fact, that if he does, they might be willing to gamble it. Let's get an update on Michael's fuel load from Gary Gerould.
Well, we had a quick word with Ed Nathman, the team manager for Newman Haas. He indicates that they've been taking conservative measures, short shifting, but those laps of yellow back at the midpoint of the race, they believe saved them. They don't think they'll have to make a final stop. They think they're fine for fuel to go the distance and get Michael his first win of the year.
A very nervous Newman Haas crew, though, tracking their car, Michael Andretti. Michael has driven a brilliant race thus far. The fastest lap of the race belongs to Michael at 112 miles an hour. That's just before his second pit stop. And he's been averaging 104.9 miles an hour, and that despite one full course caution.
And he has been superb all afternoon so far as he moved back to pick up Rick Mears, still running very strongly. Remember, he still has that damaged front wing. You see it on the side of the left front of that wing from the damage earlier on when the contact was made with Scott Pruitt. So Mears currently running in 7th place.
So Rick Mears in his 200th IndyCar start.
We mentioned earlier
Raul Boesel, who runs this circuit now, down in 9th place.
Boesel, now they say, is a full-time driver with Dick Simon. He has brought some Brazilian backing to keep him in this seat. But Dick Simon, really, their team has come such a long way this year. Suddenly they're up in the front runners, as shown by Boesel when he finished 2nd at Detroit. His best finish and Dick Simon's best finish. So this team really has come a long, long way this year.
The question would be, what's the situation, Derek, with Hiro Matsushita? He is here. He suffered a broken leg at Indy and would normally be driving this car.
And actually says he is ready to come back in about 3 weeks' time. From what I gather, Dick Simon will be prepared to run both of these drivers, which in turn, adding the Amway car with Scott Brayton, will make it a 3-car team.
So there's the stats computer generated on Raul Boesel with a great run at Detroit and a fairly decent run here at Portland.
Former world sports car champion with Jaguar when he went back to Europe when he couldn't get a full-time IndyCar ride here. And he came to Indianapolis. He was standing around with his hand in his pockets, nothing to do, when suddenly Matsushita had an accident. He was drafted into the Simon team, and he's been a star ever since.
Some indication, though, that he would have a ride on that team during this year, just a little early because of the problem with Hiro's accident at Indianapolis. On board, Bobby Rahal, still looking to move into the points. He's still in 14th, and that's 2 positions away from earning any point at all. Michael continues the lead. Back back at the Budweiser G.I. Joe 200. I'm Paul Page with Derek Daly, Jan Beekes, and Gary Gerald covering in the pits. A magnificent run here today under hot skies for Michael Andretti. The question now, with just 5 laps to go, what about fuel loads on Michael's car and on the second place car of Emerson Fittipaldi? Here is the 15th place car. That's Ted Prappus. Scott Goodyear coming up to try and put Prappus a lap down.
Interesting story with Ted Prappus. They lost the engine. Their race engine got lost during transportation. It was somewhere in Dallas, so Prappus had to sit out most of Saturday. But they worked very hard on this crew, and Daddy-O and all the dads on this crew wanted me to make sure I said hello to all their kids watching back at home on Father's Day.
Raul Boesel actually lined up to come inside of Ted Prappus and put him yet another lap down, as Boesel having a very nice run, currently in 9th place. Gary Gerald.
Well, we're talking with Chip Ganassi. He calls the shots for Eddie Cheever. You were talking about a splash and go. Is that going to happen for Eddie?
We were talking about it, Gary. Michael's right behind us right now. Michael's behind us, and we're going to let him go by, and we'll do one less lap. We got to keep John Andretti behind us, though. That's for position.
So you're going to stay on the track?
We're going to stay out there. We're going to risk it. We're going to go for a gamble here.
All right, they're gambling on this 4th place finish, and maybe even better.
Interesting little bit of strategy there. What they're saying is, when the checker comes out and they're a lap behind, they'll actually run for position 1 lap less in this race.
And that's over 2 miles, which is over a gallon of fuel. But this is what they say here. Michael is behind Cheever. They've told Cheever, move over, let him through. And I expect that's what he'll do. There he goes. There. Flies by him.
Two-way radios work very well here on the Indy cars now, as Eddie Cheever does, in fact, let Michael Andretti pass. Coming up next, we'll have all the sports news of the day on SportsCenter. And part of that will be the outcome of the IndyCar race at Portland. It is still not yet decided. Teresa Fittipaldi watches for her husband running in 2nd. Michael Andretti and Emerson Fittipaldi. The question is fuel. Will they have to come in and splash and go? A little bit of that methanol fuel into the tank, just enough to make it to the finish. Too bad we can't read Michael's dashboard a little more clearly. There's Emerson Fittipaldi. He is 7.5 seconds behind Michael.
Remember, if Emerson has to be any way conservative at all, that means he cannot hound and chase down Michael. He has to almost be satisfied with his 2nd place. But Michael has not made any mistakes all afternoon as Carl Haas sucks on that cigar and checks the final computer figures for Michael.
Carl Haas has a pretty good fan going on the edge of the pit stand there, too, to try and keep cool under these very hot skies. And Fittipaldi is saying to Scott Pruitt, please get out of the way. I'm chasing the leader of the race.
Waves his fist at Pruitt. Get out of my way. Don't slow me down. I can't use too many revs. I'm trying to save my fuel. And look at Michael. He inches further ahead. It's amazing, really, when you get behind traffic. You can easily lose 2 or 3 seconds trying to make just one pass. And, of course, that is a huge advantage to Michael, who's on clear road.
Fight continues. 100 laps now complete for the leader, Michael Andretti. There's his team. They wait. No indication that they are going to move toward the wall to try and refuel Michael Andretti. They're there. They're standing by, ready to go. Michael Andretti continues. Seems to be, though, continuing to short shift the car.
Short shift the car. Now we see Michael up behind the other Marlboro car, which is obviously Roger's other car, Rick Mears.
There's Emerson Fittipaldi, 2nd place, 8 seconds back. Conserving fuel as well. A battle of nerves now here at Portland International.
Michael has run out of fuel here before. Unbelievably, he did exactly a copybook style of what he's doing today. Dominated the whole event and ran out of fuel on the last lap. I'm sure that is a bad memory for him that he is very aware of.
Mechanically, the car has gone the full distance. The white flag is now in Nick Finauro's hand. Michael Andretti has already seen and acknowledged it, as has Emerson Fittipaldi. So it is a run now for the finish. Is there enough fuel on board both of these cars? Allinger Jr. takes the white flag. So everybody's going for the finish of the race. It's in the hands of the driver and to some degree in the hands of the fuel tank. Look at the apprehension in the pits. Neither one of the lead cars in contact at the moment. Here is Michael Andretti. Andretti running through this giant sweeper. Now moving over to the backside of the course.
And Michael's lead is still considerable over Emerson. He's still above 7 seconds. We can see a long gap there, so Michael can be slightly conservative. But he looks strong, but he's not finished yet. But he does look very strong. There's Emerson. There he is.
Emerson Fittipaldi closing down considerably during this final lap. There is Fittipaldi. That was Rick Mears right behind him. And here is Michael on the main stretch. The luck is about to change for Michael Andretti as he takes the checkered flag and scores his 3rd win in a row here at Portland. Michael Andretti's luck has changed. He's out in front at the finish. Emerson Fittipaldi comes across in 2nd place, 8.5 seconds back. Al Unser Jr. finishes in 3rd place.
And Michael has been threatening to win a race all season. Finally, he does it. He showed finesse as well as style and aggression today. And Michael comes home the winner. What a relief on his face and with his crew because of all the work they put in to try and get this win.
And frustrations even here at Portland. But now it has all been changed as Michael Andretti puts a mark in the winners column for the 3rd time in a row here at Portland. Finally done it. The brand new Ford Cosworth XB has carried Michael Andretti all the way into winner's circle. And with the Ford winner's circle interview, here's Gary Gerould.
Well, Paul, the helmet comes off. I think we're more out of breath than Michael, probably. They stopped them at mid-track. We had headed for the start-finish line, and so he gets a drink of water. We'll take a deep breath. And Michael Andretti, tell us what it feels like to finally get this one after such an adventurous season where you've been on such an emotional roller coaster, and mostly it's been down instead of up.
It feels great. I'll tell you, to finally break the ice and to do it here at Portland. I love Portland. 3 in a row. I don't think I've ever done anything 3 in a row, so it is just great.
And you almost had a 4th back in the early years when you ran out of fuel on this front straightaway and your dad got by for a Father's Day victory.
That's right. I love Portland. I love the racetrack. I love the people up here. What can I say?
Well, it's also a breakthrough here for the folks with Ford, because as they come back to IndyCar racing for the first time in 20 years, you've been fast, you've been competitive. Now Ford's got a victory to go with it. So there's, I'm sure, a little special feeling that goes along from that aspect.
Well, I'm really happy for Ford. I'm glad we were able to do it for them first. You know, they've been putting a lot of effort in. Cosworth has been putting a lot of effort in. And you know, the engine ran pretty good. Actually had a little bit of mist, to be honest with you. And I was getting a little worried, but it just kept on running, and it was still enough to get the job done.
One quick final question. Any fuel concerns from your standpoint in the late stages?
No, not really. I was able to conserve. Being out in front, you can set your own pace and, you know, save a little more fuel.
Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you.
He did it 8 times a year ago. He gets his first win this year as we go now to Jan Beekes.
Emerson Fittipaldi with a 2nd place finish. Emerson, you were close, but did you have to back off for fuel?
No, I had just got a bad situation in traffic, and on the left-hand corner, I went on the gravel once, and I lost 1 lap, like 4 seconds to Michael. But I mean, the car was running very strong. It was just, I think, I'm lack on traffic.
Where do you think Michael was pulling you? Where could you not seem to make inroads on Michael?
Well, all the race I could catch him. Just the last segment, I think Michael was a little faster on the quick parts of the track, and I was faster than Michael on the slow. He had more power on the straight.
Did you know the whole way that you would not have to make a splash and go, or was it still dicey until the very end for fuel?
No, I knew. We were right. I mean, I was trying to save as much fuel as possible, and I was behind Michael and short shift, and it was looking good.
Thank you, Emerson. Paul?
Emerson Fittipaldi comes home in 2nd place behind Michael Andretti. Michael Andretti is the moment that the Ford engine rolled into the winner's circle. 6 starts, and Ford finally has their win with Michael Andretti at the wheel.
Portland, you're looking at the left front wheel of little Al's car. You can see the rubber build up, and he's picked up some paint rolling back in here. This was a hot, steamy, sticky day in the Pacific Northwest. He gets the refreshing drink, and little Al, I know that this is you wanted to be here as a winner, but you're here again consistently with points with a good solid 3rd place finish. Was this a real tough day to be an IndyCar driver because of the heat?
Well, yeah, a little bit. You know, we're just going through the corners so quick now, and it's just real tough. You know, everybody did a good job on my crew. The Galmer held in there. The Chevy ran good. We were first in class because this is the first Chevy A engine that finished. So I'm pretty happy with the whole team. They did a great job.
You jump up now in points. Bobby Rahal had a very frustrating day, and I think the quick math says you're now only 5 points away, and that's a huge gain.
Yeah, well, when I saw Bobby off course there, I just kind of went, well, you know, it's going to help me in points if I can just stay up there with the leaders, and that's what we tried to do, and so that was it.
All right, congratulations on your drive today.
Great, thank you.
All right, let's go to Jan.
Bobby Rahal, you didn't quite get back into the points. What caused that spin?
I don't know, John. I think either I just dumped the left rear off into the dirt just slightly, or yeah, that's the thing I can think, because the car was fine, and all of a sudden it just went snap sideways. So not too good.
Not what you hoped for on Father's Day. You are a new father. The points, though, you're still in the lead.
Yeah, we gave them one today. We gave everybody a race to catch up, but I don't think it's going to happen again, let's put it that way.
Anything that you can do? I mean, it appeared as though from the monitor Derek Daly said might be brake bias, lock and rear brakes. Is that a possibility?
No, that's because I was on the power when it happened. So as I say, I think it just if it didn't dump a left rear off into the dirt there, you know, right at the exit of the corner, it must maybe got on marbles or something, because everything was fine. Then it just snapped sideways. So that wasn't on the brakes. No.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you,
Paul.
Well, unofficially for the moment, but Bobby Rahal has 79 points. There's the PPG IndyCar World Series points lineup with Al Unser Jr. and Emerson Fittipaldi closing up now on Bobby Rahal and tightening this season up. It's been a terrific year. Now with Gary Gerould.
Paul, he got back into the sanctity of the transporter. He's got the leg up ice bag here. A moment ago, the ice bag was up on his head. There's a cold towel back here. Mario, I tell you what, it's a tough Father's Day to be out here doing IndyCar duty, but we congratulate you on getting through this after what had to be an extraordinary couple of weeks, having to miss Detroit, surgery on Wednesday to get the pins out, and finally be out here racing today.
Well, you know, just being back in the saddle to me was just a great feeling throughout the weekend, and you know, the race in itself was just a bit uneventful to some degree for me, but you know, one time one of the cars that came out of the pit sort of some cold tire lost it in the chicane, and then he tried to get back, and obviously they know I was there, and wiped out some of my aerodynamics, and that really hurt my balance, and from there on I lost a couple of spots in that area, and I held what I had, but you know, it was just tough going forward, because I was totally maxed out on my right foot as far as the braking. You know, just the carbon sole I needed on both feet, you know, but again, I don't think I heard anything. I don't think I said anything back. So from here on, I think it'll be just smooth sailing.
When you have a close call with another car like that, coming off your accident in Indianapolis, does any of that again flash through your head and say, oh no, am I going to get hurt again?
Oh, no, not at all. In fact, it was just one of those scrambled things at the slowest part of the course, and it was a matter of trying to get through unscathed. But other than that, you know, there was no fear such as that. And give me this opportunity to say hi to Jeff. I'm sure he's watching. See you in a couple of days.
All right, Mario, we thank you. We look forward to seeing you in action next week in Milwaukee.
You bet. I look forward to that.
All right, let's go to Jan Beekes again.
Gary, we're standing by with Scott Pruitt. Pruitt, you had a tough day. You got together with Rick Mears. What happened there? Do you know?
It's got real crowded down there in the chicane on turn one. I mean, everybody was going for it, and somebody on top of me and Rick underneath me, and we just kind of tangled up a little bit, and unfortunately kind of took a little bit of the balance out of my car. Otherwise, I think the Budweiser Eagle would have had a good day.
There's been a lot of talk about the team and so on, due to the fact you've had some people changes and so on, people leaving the team. Next year going to Lola's. What is the plan? How hard are you working on this car now as opposed to planning for next year?
Our focus right now and with the whole team is go out and win races this season. I mean, go out and give it our best. The mechanics are focused on going. Barbara is focused on going, and we're going to compete hard this season. What happens next year still way down the road, but our goal right now is to go out and try and win every race.
You've got the only American-made chassis. Where do you think it's lacking versus, let's say, the Galmer and the Penske and the Lola?
The biggest part of of developing a car is putting miles on it. Now, if you have one car, one driver, you only get so many miles. If you have 3 drivers, 3 cars, you get 3 times that amount, let alone if you have a lot of cars doing and a lot of drivers doing development. So that's the biggest thing we're lacking, is just pure miles and developing that race car.
Did.
And you got kind of bounced around on the start a little bit. What happened there?
It just got tight quarters. I mean, we just came down there, and you know, as you saw, it was a real bottleneck going down in there, and everybody was fighting for position, and a little bumping and bruising going on, but everybody came out generally unscathed.
Okay, Paul, well, it sounds like a teammate might help and develop that car, so I'm going to stay here and talk to him for a while. Paul?
Now you stay with us and do pit reporting, Jan. We were talking about Brian Till, who did get together with Mario Andretti. We were about to show you this when it happened. His top 10 things that rookies should not do. Call Roger Penske Raj. Make short jokes about the Andrettis. Number 8, hide Danny Sullivan's Ray-Ban sunglasses. Number 7, tell the Ford guys you'd rather have a Chevy. Number 6, tell the Chevy guys you'd rather have a Ford. Number 5 on Brian Till's list, ask the other drivers for autographs. Number 4, talk while Bobby Rahal is putting. Number 3, tell an owner you'll drive for free. Some of them have. Number 2, make fun of British accents. And Irish. Number 1, ask A.J. Foyt what he thinks of rookies. Which, of course, when you ask that, then you duck. Now, Eddie Cheever.
Yes, Paul, Eddie has made the change from the driver's suit. It's got to feel good to get out of there. You probably lost 3-4 pounds easily today.
I don't know how many pounds I lost, but I'm sure a lot of it was water. It was really hot out there today. The track was really greasy. It was coming up. They keep having these Trans Am races before our races, and it keeps giving us a lot of problem. And the track conditions were not the best today.
You had to gamble a little bit. Chip told us with a couple of laps to go, you might make a splash and go for fuel, but you wanted to protect that position. How concerned were you about being able to finish?
Well, I could see after about 15 laps into the race, the car was handling not as well as I was hoping it was going to. We've had problems all weekend. So my concern through the whole race is to stay consistent, not bump into anybody. Lots of cars going off the track. So when we had when it was touch and go, if we were going to make it on fuel, it was a very wise decision. I think they could have called me in, but I might have just unhooked the radio and kept on going because I wasn't about to come in for a splash.
Another nice, consistent points-paying finish. Congratulations.
You're right. It was a points-paying finish. Everything is tightened up, but we really have to go do a bit of testing on some street circuits because we funny thing is, we're faster on ovals. I'm faster on ovals this year than we were on street circuits. Maybe I ought to go back to Formula One for a few years and sort it out and come back again.
All right. Thanks, Eddie. Paul?
Thank you.
Michael Andretti being honored on the podium, and many of the fans staying here in 95-degree temperatures to watch the final ceremonies. Next week, IndyCars on ABC from Wisconsin and Milwaukee, and then back on ESPN with the New England 200. A new race from Loudon, New Hampshire, live 12:30 Eastern. Don't miss that one. It's a great track. Brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? By American Paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. And by Budweiser, the king of beers with that clean, crisp, cold taste. Nothing beats a Bud. So Michael Andretti jumps from 9th to 6th in the points and scores 3 in a row at Portland.